Christian Wilkins, who was a substitute teacher last spring for several Oconee County schools.
These men earned tens of millions of dollars playing professional football and then went home to shared apartments, budget airlines, fake jewelry from Claire's, and in one case, the stadium itself. Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins grew up the youngest of 8 children in Springfield, Massachusetts, in a household where money was genuinely scarce. And that upbringing produced spending habits so extreme that his college teammates talked about them the way other people talk about legends. At Clemson, Wilkins rented the cheapest apartment he could find for $300 a month, spent as much time as possible at the football facility to eat free meals and reduce his utility bills at home, showered exclusively after practice to save on water and electricity, wore only his. Team issued clothing so he never had to buy his own, stayed on his family's phone plan to avoid bills, and biked everywhere rather than own a car. When he did get rides from friends, he always gave them gas money because even his frugality had a code of decency built into it. His most famous money-saving technique, the one that has followed him into every profile written about him since, was his restaurant lemonade hack. He would order free water, ask for 6 lemon slices, squeeze them into the glass, and mix in the complimentary sugar packets from the table. Free lemonade. Every time. He also worked as a substitute teacher in his final year at Clemson, earning $80 a day and saving it. When he entered the NFL as a first-round pick in 2019 and began earning millions, none of this changed. He has since earned over $55 million in contracts. He still sneaks food into cinemas. He still makes his own lemonade at restaurants. He still flies budget airlines like Frontier when first-class seats on the same flight cost a fraction of 1% of his annual salary. Rob Gronkowski. Rob Gronkowski earned over $70 million in NFL contracts during an 11-year career with the New England Patriots and Tampa Bay Buccaneers that included multiple Super Bowl championships and a statistical legacy that put him among the greatest tight ends in league. History. He has said publicly, repeatedly, and in his own memoir that he never spent a single dollar of that money. Not $1. His strategy from the beginning of his career was to live entirely off endorsement income and marketing deals, and to put every game check directly into savings, reasoning that his football salary represented his financial security and his endorsement money was sufficient to cover everything he actually needed day to day. Early in his career, he lived with a roommate, drove modest cars, and paid for his first car and housing using a $50,000 bonus from his agent rather than touching his NFL checks. Even as his contracts grew and his fame expanded into the kind of celebrity that generates invitations to every luxury experience imaginable, his spending habits stayed simple. He has admitted to wearing the same clothes and shoes until they are completely worn out before replacing them, describing it as a broke habit he cannot shake and does not particularly want to. The $70 million remains largely untouched. He describes that fact with something closer to satisfaction than regret. Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins has earned close to $300 million across his NFL career, including an $84 million fully guaranteed contract with the Minnesota Vikings and a $180 million deal with the Atlanta Falcons signed in March 2024. For years, the most discussed element of his financial life was not the contracts, but the vehicle. A dented GMC Savannah passenger van purchased from his grandmother for $5,000 that Cousins drove to work, to public appearances, and through the general business of being one of the highest-paid quarterbacks in professional football. His reasoning was explicit and consistent. He considers spending money on anything that loses value to be irrational. And a new luxury car loses value from the moment it leaves the dealership. The van was eventually replaced, though the replacement was not flashy. His living situation attracted even more commentary than the vehicle. During multiple off-seasons, Cousins and his wife chose to live in either his parents' basement in Michigan or his wife's parents' basement in Georgia, rather than rent or buy property during periods when they were planning their next move carefully. He paid no rent in either location. He has been asked about this arrangement in interviews, and his answer has always centered on the same principle: unnecessary expenses are unnecessary expenses regardless of what is in the bank account. Chad Johnson. Chad Johnson, known during his playing career as Ochocinco, earned nearly $50 million as one of the most productive wide receivers of the 2000s and claims to have saved over 80% of it through a system of financial habits so committed that they require some unpacking. The jewelry you saw him wearing throughout his career was not what you assumed it was. He bought his pieces from Claire's Accessories at the mall, paying around $8 per item and calculating, correctly, that under broadcast lighting at NFL stadiums, nobody in the stands could distinguish cubic zirconia from diamonds. The cars he appeared in were rentals for specific occasions. There were no private jets. He flew economy class on budget airlines and specifically requested exit row seats for the extra legroom as his one concession to comfort. His most extreme cost-cutting measure came at the beginning of his career with the Cincinnati Bengals. Rather than pay rent for an apartment, Johnson lived inside the Bengals stadium for his first 2 seasons. The facility had showers, a cafeteria, a couch, televisions, and gaming systems. His argument was philosophical as much as financial. He said time is free, so why should he pay for it? And added that there is nothing he could buy that would be bigger than his name. He lived in a professional football stadium for 2 years, saved the rent money, and has described the period with no apparent embarrassment. Jordy Nelson. Jordy Nelson earned nearly $60 million during an 11-year NFL career as one of the most reliable wide receivers of his era. Won a Super Bowl with the Green Bay Packers, and then went home to Kansas to work 12-hour days on his family's farm during the off-season. Not for the publicity. Not for the content. Because that is the life he prefers. He grew up in Riley County in a farming family where money was treated carefully and hard work was not optional, and neither of those things changed after the paychecks got larger. His frugality showed up during the season in a specific way that his teammates found notable. When NFL players travel for road games, they receive a per diem allowance to cover meals at restaurants. Nelson did not use his. He stayed in his hotel room, ate the snacks provided by the league, and pocketed the cash. He has described himself as extremely cheap, and his own father has joked that despite having substantial money, Nelson buys properties filled with broken equipment and overgrown trees specifically because he plans to fix everything himself rather than hire anyone to do it. Instead of luxury homes and vehicles, Nelson invested in farmland, equipment, and assets connected to the life he actually wanted to be living. Quin. Glover Quin played a decade in the NFL with the Houston Texans and Detroit Lions, earning tens of millions of dollars as one of the league's most consistent safeties, and structured his entire financial life around a single rule from the moment he signed his first professional contract. He would live on 30% of his income and invest the other 70%. That meant his household budget during his playing years was approximately $6,000 per month, regardless of what his contract said. And everything above that threshold went into publicly traded companies and later private businesses that he researched with the same analytical. Darius Heyward-Bey. Darius Heyward-Bey was the 7th overall pick in the 2009 NFL Draft. Earned over $35 million during his career, and put himself on a strict personal allowance for the entirety of it, with his mother, a certified accountant, managing his finances, tracking every expense, and sending him regular financial reports so he remained constantly aware of where every dollar was going. He had seen what happened to NFL players who lost control of their money, and he decided the most reliable solution was to remove control from himself entirely. Every expense was tracked. He cancelled cable television during football seasons because he was not home enough to watch it, describing it as an unnecessary cost that most people in his income bracket would not notice, and would certainly not bother cancelling. He has said he often had to say no to himself even when he could easily afford something, not because he was disciplined in some performed public way, but because the habit of restraint had become more natural to him than the alternative. Marshawn Lynch. Marshawn Lynch earned close to $50 million in NFL contracts over a 12-year career, won a Super Bowl with the Seattle Seahawks, and signed endorsement deals with Nike, Pepsi, Skittles, and Microsoft that generated substantial additional income. His approach to these two revenue streams was the same as Gronkowski's. He lived off the endorsement money and left the football salary untouched. By retirement, he had reportedly saved over $40 million from his playing contracts alone. His day-to-day habits contradicted his net worth in ways that people around him found consistently amusing. His cousin, rapper Mr. Fab, has described Lynch debating publicly whether something costs $10 or $15 before deciding whether to buy it. He has been linked to driving modest vehicles, including a Toyota Prius, and at one point joked about using it to drive for Uber when he was bored. He gives blunt financial advice to younger players, and its central message has never changed: take care of your money. Stop trying to impress people who will not be around when it is gone. 8 players. Hundreds of millions of dollars combined. Budget airlines, shared apartments, fake jewelry, free lemonade, and one man who lived in a stadium for 2 years to avoid paying rent. Drop a comment telling us which one surprised you the most. Check the end screen right now for more breakdowns sitting there waiting.